So I've got the recording going. And I apologize in advance. I do not normally like to do this, but you guys are going to get a PowerPoint from me. We've got some new people on the call. We had organizations that kind of joined right as we were putting the application in. We actually have some organizations that have joined since we put the application in. So not everybody's fully familiar with the full team here. And so we thought it would be helpful to use this call to not only provide an update, but also to kind of get everybody on the same page and understanding of like, who is the team and what are we going to be doing and what's the time frame for that. So with that, if I can figure out how to do it. Sorry, I'm still trying to figure out how to do this all with multiple monitors. All right. So I will not do this in the future, I promise. I don't like doing PowerPoints with groups like this. And I don't want to be overly formal with it. So feel free to just raise your hand. If I don't see it, your hand, just unmute and type up and ask a question. We want to make sure that everybody's got good information and understanding. So do feel free to interrupt. I just wanted to start. I love this. Was the article that came out in WAPO when they announced the Recce Awards. So in case you haven't seen it, just thought it was super cool. Have to click in the right place to forward. There we go. And then also, if you haven't seen this, this came out in the very end of August in the Arizona Republic. And I love this sentence because this really is a lot of the reason why we are doing this project. Is this, ad hoc, as Braden before he left used to refer to it as the balkanization of building codes. And so trying to do this work collectively. So anyway, just wanted to show you those two articles in case you hadn't seen them. So we're gonna, as I said earlier, we're gonna go through like who's on the call, who are the core partners, a little bit about roles and also contacts. We'll go through an update on the process. It has been exactly 3 months and 1 week since the awards were announced, and I know that's a lot of time, and so we want to make sure everyone knows what's been happening and kind of what's left to do before we can formally get things launched. So you can kind of think of this as a little bit of an informal kickoff. Then we're going to talk about the scope of work. That is basically the Bible for us, that outlines what we're going to do, what we've committed to, the timing of it. And so I'm not going to go through it in super detail, but I want folks to be aware of it. We are still waiting to hear back from DOE on what hopefully will be this is final endorsement on the SOPO. And as soon as that happens, we'll actually share the document with all of you. And then talk a little bit about next steps. Yeah, we'll have time for questions, but don't wait till the end. Just pipe up if you've got questions. So on the call or invited to the call are basically two groups. On the first side are our recipients and subrecipients. So these are the really great technical partners that we have that are getting funding through the grant to do this work on our behalf. Most of you are aware New Buildings Institute applied for the grant on our behalf, which we greatly appreciate. Many of you remember Kim Cheslak, who was a really key person in putting the application together with us. If you did not know, she moved on from NBI right after the application was submitted. She stayed long enough to get it in for us. She has ironically moved on to Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, who is providing technical assistance to the Recce recipients. It sounds like she's going to be the lead for technical assistance to the Southwest. So it is pretty certain we will be working with her again, just in a different capacity. Since she's left, Sean, who's on the call, wave, has kindly taken over as project manager. You also have probably gotten or may have gotten emails from Kevin Barry, who's also on the call. He is, I don't know if it's formally your title, Kevin, but grants manager, basically. And so there are going to be times where you will get contacted by either one of them about the project. But these are the two folks at NBI that are really kind of taking the lead on the grant management side of things. And then two of the so the next rest of the list are subrecipients. I'm calling out ICC and LISC Phoenix because they are in a lot of ways driving large portions of this project. So ICC is, as everyone knows, a code expert. They lead these the development of these model codes, and they'll be doing a lot of the training and certification aspects of the project. And the main point of contact there is Stella, and I believe she's on the call. And then LISC Phoenix, which is overseeing a lot of the equitable engagement, workforce aspects of the project. And at least for right now, David Longoria is the point of contact. I know you guys just have been talking about maybe hiring someone else or bringing someone else in, so that might change. And then among the other subrecipients, Quest Energy Group is a firm out of Tempe that does a lot of large commercial type of green building. So they've got a lot of technical expertise. They help the city of Tempe look at the I guess IECC and maybe the IGCC 2021 and how, what the implications of Tempe implementing that for city projects. And so they've got some great technical expertise. Quadro Design, Shay is a local architect here in Tucson. And so she's a little on the other perspective of more of, the owner builder, the smaller perspective on sustainable design. And she also does a lot of work in kind of the affordable housing space, sits on the Commission for Equitable Housing and Development here in Tucson. You should all be familiar with Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. They are just a tremendous resource. They're regional energy efficiency office, and they in particular are going to have kind of a workforce development piece to the project. Urban Sustainability Directors Network, of which a number of people on the call are members, are really helping with kind of the broader dissemination and getting the word out to other jurisdictions about what we're doing. They also bring a lot of equity expertise, which will be greatly appreciated, including equity in the building space. Institute for Energy Solutions, and I know, Jonathan, you're on the call. They are a partner really, I think, taking a major lead on the living implementation guide. That's a core part of what we're doing on this project. And there's an asterisk after them because we could not get this formalized in time for the application, but IES is actually bringing some of their own money to the table to help with the implementation guide, and also just helping with understanding the value of the approach that we're taking here and communicating that out at the national level. So we're really excited to have them as a partner, and really honored to that they're interested enough to throw some of their own money into this. The Nature Conservancy is a new partner. They're actually not a subrecipient, and I don't think Nicole could make the call today, but they have funding that they need to utilize around greenhouse gas mitigation in the built environment, specifically around buildings. When they heard about this project, they thought it would probably be really good to kind of merge our efforts. And so while they're not a subrecipient, they are also bringing money to the table to help with the project, which is super exciting. And then Illume Advising is a new partner as well. They would have been a partner all along if we had known about them before putting in the application. They came to my attention after we submitted the application because they were hired to do some work for PNNL around what does equity look like, how is equity being captured in building codes. They've done some really amazing work, including some work in New York State around equity. How do you measure, how do you make sure that equity is really carried out in climate programs, that then led really to the National Justice 40. So we're really thrilled to have them as a partner as well. There will be others. There is a portion of this project where we are going to be contracting with community-based organizations. That part has not been completed yet, so there will be other recipients that'll get added to this list. But for right now, these are the named recipients of funding in the application. The next group that's here are the jurisdictions, including our state energy offices that signed letters of commitment. So this is kind of what we're referring to as the foundational group. We will have other communities that are involved. We've got quite a bit of interest, including in additional states. But really the core group is this, and the project is in Arizona, New Mexico. We're hoping, we've got interest from communities in Utah, potentially Nevada. So we're hoping to have some other communities kind of follow along and benefit from the process. But this is really the core group. Our state energy offices, which is in Arizona, the Office of Resiliency, and in New Mexico, Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department, are really, really key because a lot of the building related funding through IRA is going to come through these two offices. And so having them as a partner and being able to share what we're doing, what we're learning, and what are the needs in the building code space in our states that are maybe beyond the project, and they can use that then to consider how they pursue those funding opportunities. You will notice I am called out here kind of as local coordinator, point of contact. The city of Tucson has generously volunteered a great deal of my time to help support this project. I'm taking on this particular role to take it off of NBI. They are great technical resources as well, which I am not when it comes to building codes. So I'm trying to take as much of the coordination role, being the person who answers questions or tries to get answers to questions, leading a lot of the communication, so we can preserve their time for supporting us in more technical fashion. So typically the communications on the project will come from me. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have ideas, feel free to reach out. This is my role. Don't feel like you're bugging me. I'm here to help facilitate this process as best as I can. You may get communications from some of the others if it's needed for their particular role. But as I said, a lot of it will really come from me or through me. Sean, you want to add anything here before we move on to update?
No, I think that's a really good way to sum up how things will work. So thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about process. Like I said, the award selections were announced on July 12th. So we have spent the last 3 months working on revising primarily what's called the SOPO, which is the scope of work for the project, and the budgets. We requested 4.1 million. We only received 3.5. Pretty much everyone, I think there might have been one project that did not get less than what they requested. So we are not alone. And in fact, some projects took much bigger hits than we did. I know of one that their budget got cut in half. So we are still, out of the 27 projects that were awarded, we're still the 8th largest, which I think is a real testament to this amazing group of people and organizations that we have, and just the value that DOE sees in what we're proposing to do. So a lot of this work on the SOPO was around, how do we reduce the scope? What's the best way to do it and preserve the original intent? The DOE did want us to increase, even though they cut our funding, increase the amount of training and certification we were doing. So we had to up that a little bit. A lot of this is really also adding additional detail to what we're doing. In the application, we were limited to 5 pages. That's not a lot to try to explain in detail what you're doing in a project this size. So the SOPO is now closer to 10 pages. And then there were some additional elements that DOE has added, and we can talk about that a little bit more later, but roughly there's some national coordination pieces that are going to be thrown in, are being thrown in to kind of try to link all of these 27 projects together and try to look for synergies and ways for them to, share and benefit from each other. So what we ended up doing was we removed very specifically the development and piloting of a workforce development curriculum with our community college partners. The rationale for that was, as important as it is, it came in kind of at the last moment. And so it was not very well fleshed out. LISC Phoenix is really instrumental in getting those conversations going. And I think we felt that we could use a little bit more time to develop it. There are a lot of other funding opportunities that are coming down the pipe. And so we're not viewing it as done. We're viewing it as it will be a phase 2. And so there's some assessment work and other elements to our project that we're retaining that will build a foundation for doing that. And then also there's a lot of workforce funding specific to the building industry that's coming to our state energy offices. And so as they ramp up those programs, that'll give us something else we can build from as well in doing that phase 2 application. So that was really the big change, was pulling out that specific pilot. Like I said, there's more training, there's more certification, there's national coordination. So I think it feels like the intent is still really strongly there. And I think it's a pretty solid scope. Like I said, as soon as we hear back from DOE that they've okayed it, then we will get it out to everyone. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we might, if we don't hear by the end of this week, we'll hear next week. Fingers crossed. So any questions on that? If not, I'm going to kick it over to Sean and Kevin to talk about where we're at and where we need to go before we can actually formally start work on the project.
All right. Thank you so much, Leslie. That was really good and a really good start to this conversation. So right now we are in the paperwork headache phase of the process. So, and I want to preface this whole discussion with, I think, maybe a little bit of level setting, that there's all this funding available through DOE, and this particular funding opportunity was really good in that it did not require a cost share. However, the cost share really helps with the application. It's one of the reasons that I think our budget remained as intact as it did. However, as we were discussing earlier this week, that doesn't mean it's free money. You pay with it. You pay for it with aggravation when it comes right down to it. So we are in the process of finalizing all the documentation that we need to do. The award is confirmed, but it is not released. That means that we don't get any of the funding till we finish all the paperwork. DOE is dealing with a whole bunch of projects right now. And not only that, they're dealing with a whole bunch of projects that are structured slightly differently than the projects that they've normally done through their funding opportunities, which means that the answers that we get from DOE are not always consistent or readily coming. But we are getting very close. We have most of our documentation in. The final and we have responded to most of DOE's comments. They keep coming back with more, and we respond, and each time it gets smaller and smaller. I think we may have finally given them the final version of the SOPO, which is really our scope of work. And the last pieces that we have to turn in are revised letters of commitment and then the final budget based on those letters. The federal side of that budget is done. It's just we have to make sure that we account for the cost share. So that's really should be our last steps. Hopefully, it looks like the last steps that we will need to do. And once we have done that, we do have the start date at the beginning of this month. So we will be able to actually start distributing and moving this process forward and actually launch the project and not just doing paperwork. I do want to highlight probably what is the most significant wrinkle, which is that we did not get a clear answer early on from DOE about the letters of commitment. As most of you remember, the original letters that you submitted were just, for those who submitted them, just laid out the number of hours. And the direction from DOE in the past was to just use a flat $200 per hour levelized rate for estimating the value of those hours. We have since gotten new guidance as of 2 days ago that they actually want to see the actual value as accounted by the jurisdiction organization, whatever the entity that is contributing a cost share of labor, they want to see the value of it based on their actual valuation. So this is different from what we thought we would have to do. And this is probably our biggest wrinkle and probably the biggest aggravation for all of you who submitted a letter of commitment, is that, especially if you were on top of things, which I really apologize, if you were on top of things that this might lead to even more aggravation for you. But once we get those final letters in, then we can submit them to DOE and get everything finalized and have all of our ducks in a row. We've heard the concerns about the letters of commitment. I think those are really legitimate concerns. So we've been working on some kind of boilerplate language that you can include to make sure that it is very clear in your letters of commitment that you are not contributing cash, you are contributing hours, which have a value. But you're making a commitment to hours, not to actually contributing cash. No matter how DOE might want to handle it in their accounting, it is hours that you are contributing to this project. And I believe that we have shared that, Leslie, and if not, then we can certainly share it with everyone. So that's kind of the biggest last hurdle, we think, to finalizing all the documentation so that the funding can actually be released. And I know that we had one question about the letter of commitment at the very beginning that we reserved for now. So would you like to go ahead and ask that? I'm horrible with names, so I've already forgotten who asked it. But we did have one question on letter of commitment, and then we can answer any other questions about the letter of commitment or where we are in the process.
Laura, did that answer your question? Or
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I have a question. What does the black and the green ink code mean?
The green is I have gotten letters from you.
Okay, just, yeah, because I did send mine to you yesterday. Thank you.
Yes. It was just my flag that we are sitting to get them in, and I just saw an email that looks like I've gotten Tempe's now too. So, and Laura has said she's working on hers. So we are we're getting there. Ours is in front of our mayor right now. So hopefully we can get this resolved. Do try to, I believe we put a request that we try to get these by Tuesday next week. By putting that date, the hope is that that will give us a week to get DOE to make sure they're okay and finalize everything, and hopefully get this formally kicked off by November 1st. The project actually started October 1st. So our time is ticking, but we cannot access the funds and we cannot formally start work. Do though start at least kind of informally jotting down your time. So everybody, this is part of your match. And Sean, if we can get like templates or things to folks sooner rather than later, so we're not, documenting in one way and then having to, switch it over to a different template, that would be helpful. So, do be counting your time, even though this is not fully kicked off yet.
And one of the questions that we do have to DOE that we're waiting for an answer on right now is what the accounting of your time needs to look like when it is in-kind time. They have fairly clear requirements for tracking the time that is being paid by federal dollars, but they don't have such clear requirements for time that is the in-kind. So we are waiting for the answer to that question. I will say on other projects, we have just submitted a statement that says so-and-so worked this many hours during this period of performance, and that's it. We've just done a standard form. But since this funding opportunity has been different than others in a couple of ways, we didn't want to just assume that that's what it would be like.
But as soon as we hear back from DOE, we can communicate that to the group and let you know how it needs to be documented. All right, unless there are any other questions here, and if there are later, that's fine as well. And I need to get my cursor in the right spot. There we go. All right, so let's move on to the SOPO. This is what we are being held to. This document is really sets out all of the deliverables that we are expected to fulfill. And it also sets out some timeframes in which that will be done. So there's basically these 6 sections to the SOPO. There's a project objective statement. I didn't put the whole thing here just for space. There's a technical scope summary that specifies the project's broken into 3 budget periods and kind of sets a high-level statement about what's happening during each of those periods. D&E are really simplistic. There's like a couple sentences around, how it's going to be managed and presenting out about it. It's really C and F that are what defines what we're going to do and when. And so those are the pieces that I'm going to focus on. I really encourage everyone, read the SOPO when we get it to you, but we wanted to at least walk through it so that you understand kind of what we're committing to, and at least at a high level, and how this is all going to work. So that task to be performed is broken out in tasks and milestones. So there are a number of tasks. We have one The first one is really related to project management. So it's specific to the whole project. So there's a quick description of the task, you know, not even a full sentence, a phrase. Then there is a summary of a couple of sentences about what this entails. And then there's specific milestones. Those milestones are kind of the deliverables. They're the actual activities that we're doing. This is just DOE terminology. It's a little, I feel it's a little wonky, but that's just the way it is. Then in the summary table, this is the task and milestones are repeated in a even more summarized form, and it specifies a quarter that it's due. And so the quarters are, as you know, 3-month period. So it sets out like at the end of that period, we're going to provide, you know, this particular milestone. The table also does very generally detail what proving that means. Like, what are we providing back to DOE to demonstrate fulfilling that milestone? So, for example, if it's a meeting, we would be providing, you know, agenda, minutes, list of attendees kind of thing. Then for each budget period, this is repeated. There are a number of tasks per budget period, a number of milestones per task. At the end of each budget period, there is a go, no go decision point that looks back at those milestones and says, you know, it calls out a couple of them as being, these are really key elements, but it's really, did you adequately accomplish those milestones that you identified? And this is important to understand, because if we get to that go, no go decision point and DOE says, you've not performed adequately, they can stop the project right there and we're done. So there's a go, no go decision point at the end of budget period 1, budget period 2. And then for the final one, it's not a go, no go, because we will have done the entire project. It's more of an end of project goal that summarizes what we should have accomplished in kind of a fairly generic statement. So here's the specifics. So this is a 4-year project, meaning there's 16 quarters, but it's broken into 3 budget periods, which mean the budget periods are 18, 18, and 12 months. The reason for the fewer number of budget periods is because of these go, no go decision points. It's a process. There's effort and time that it takes to do that evaluation. And DOE doesn't want to do that any more than they absolutely have to. So that's why the years and the budget periods don't align. Across the project, there are 10 tasks. It's really front loaded to budget period 1, which makes sense because we're really standing up the project and getting it going. So they're broken. There's 5 tasks in the first budget period, and then 3, and then 2. That's also reflected in the milestone. So there's 40 basically deliverables that we've committed to across the whole project, with half of those being in the first budget period. So a little more specificity. So budget period 1, not good. Again, we're going to do this really high level. You'll get the SOPO. Please go through it. We'll reflect back on it as we have these discussions so that, you know, people know what's coming. The first task, like I said, is project management and planning. And that really is to complete a project management plan, which NBI will take the lead on, and establish a project steering committee. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Then there are 4 additional tasks in that budget period 1 around, I mentioned, you know, having national collaboration. And this also includes working with PNNL to figure out what the technical assistance is going to look like, setting up the engagement process, scoping out the codes and the supporting elements to it. The net zero pathway, and we talked about extreme heat and existing building appendices or supporting documentation. So what exactly are we talking about that we're going to do? And then doing assessment around education, training, implementation needs, understanding what the barriers are to adoption and implementation of these kinds of codes. And so you can see the go, no go, it calls out, these 4 elements that are key, but it's still all 21 milestones in this period that we're going to be held accountable for. And that's the number behind each task is. So the national collaboration, there's 3 milestones, 7, 3, and 6. And it repeats itself for budget period 2. So as you can see, budget period 1 is really just getting ourselves set up, scoping this, doing this assessment work, and starting our engagement process. Budget period 2, we're continuing the community engagement. And you can see with the community engagement ones, you've got 7 milestones here, 7 milestones there. So I know 40 seems like a lot. A lot of it is around us engaging. So that's a real heavy part of this project. And I know that was important to a lot of folks, that this be really inclusive and very community oriented. But this is really, developing the actual code and supporting policies and other things, and then starting to develop the implementation resources as well. And then finally, in the last budget period, again, continuing the community engagement, and then actually launching the implementation resources, which include training and certification and getting the codes out there, doing a lot of education around all of that. All right. Questions there before I move into next steps? See, I've got something in the chat. It's hard for me to pay attention. Okay. Okay. Making sure I'm not missing anything. All right, so next steps. This is not all of the milestones that are due early in the project, but these are some of the ones that are key and some of the ones that we really want to make sure are kind of collaboratively done and defined. Things like participation in the national coordination is something we can certainly, make an opportunity for everyone, but it's not something that as a group, we all need to participate. NBI will need to participate. We will as Tucson, and like I said, we can let you know about it. So we didn't put things like that on here. Some of the milestones are also the responsibility of, a smaller number of entities. One of them, for example, is around doing the contracting for community-based organizations, which is really going to come down to LISC and NBI driving that process. So this is really, we want everyone engaged on. So like I said, the project management plan and the steering committee, we need to get done by the end of this year. Absolute due date. We committed to launching the project website by the end of next March. So one really important caveat with the due dates is that DOE required us to have a milestone due in every quarter. So that meant we had to be a little arbitrary sometimes in the quarter that we had things due. So even though, so the reason why the project website launch is not due till next March is we needed a milestone due in quarter 2. And so we pushed it out. So a lot of these things, just keep in mind the due date may be farther out than we really can support with getting the project done in a timely fashion. So we'll talk about those due dates, but we need to, from a project perspective, think about when does it actually make sense to get these things stood up. So even though it's not quote unquote due till the end of March, we really should be focusing on the project website. I think you all know we have kind of a placeholder one, but we need to talk about like where do we want to host that really for the long term? What does it need to include? How do we evolve it over time? Things like that. We also need to figure out how to set up the equity advisory panel and the technical advisory groups. Again, that's not due till the end of March either, but we have to have 7 meetings of those groups by March of 2025. So we really should get those groups set up sooner rather than later. And we need to put some thought, some pre-planning into, you know, what really is the function of those groups? What are we asking them to do? What's the composition that we're looking for? You know, how is that engagement going to happen? So figuring out that process. We need to have a community engagement plan. Again, another arbitrary end date. We said we'd have it by the end of June to have something in that quarter, but we're clearly going to want to get that done sooner rather than later. And then the other one that I put up here is developing the surveys, because and this is why we brought Illum on. They have a lot of great experience in social marketing and doing this kind of survey work, specifically in the energy space. We committed to having those. Oh, I still have July 1. I think it's June 30. I didn't put the end of the quarter. So we have until the end of June also to get those done, but the survey work needs to be done by the end of 2024. So we really need to be planning those soon. And the surveys are a really great opportunity to really, one, set this project up very, very solidly in terms of grounding in community needs, understanding what the barriers, what the needs are for building departments to adopt these kinds of codes. This survey work could also build into other programs, support other initiatives, support us getting additional funding for workforce development. So we really want to have as many of you engaged in thinking through what we want to ask and how we want to ask it for, and who we want to ask it of. So these are really, I see the early stuff that we're going to need to be banging through. One thing I want to throw out here to the group, in addition to if you have any questions, is I'm kind of seeing this group that's on this call as the basis for the steering committee. And I want to see what folks think about that. I don't think it should be super formal. I'm a firm believer in keeping things as informal and fluid as possible. I think it makes life easier. I'm also of the mind that the more people we have on the steering committee, the better, because not everybody's going to be able to make all of the calls. And I don't see us getting into places where it's like, you know, majority vote over something. I think everyone here is of a like mind, and we can kind of talk through things and make decisions fairly easily. Certainly that was the case in putting the application together. So my feeling is by having as many of this kind of core group, it allows some flexibility. If people can't make calls, we still have a good critical mass. We still have a good broad representation, and kind of keeping it fluid there. And David, I see your comment, and yes, as soon as we figure out who the CBO subrecipients are, I fully intend for them to be added to this group. I just didn't want to add them without having had that commitment that these are the groups that we're working with. So yes, and if it needs to be broader, we can talk about that too. I was just trying to think about like how do we set parameters in a way that makes sense, that gets the people that are really invested in this at the table, and gives us good representation without it being unmanageable. So I'm going to stop there. What do folks think?
I just wanted to note that I think Leslie's word of as the start is the really key one. I think this group is a good start for the steering committee. So, you know, who else needs to be on, who from this group maybe doesn't, and self-understanding that, or if there is someone else from your organization or jurisdiction who you feel would be a better fit than the person who was on this call today for the steering committee, I think that would be useful to know as well.
Yeah. And thank you, Sean. I've actually worked up a little table to send out to everybody, because when I set up this meeting, I included everybody from your jurisdiction or organization that I had been given a contact for that was going to somehow be affiliated, trying to be as inclusive as possible. So I've got a table that I'll send out after the call, asking you, I've got everyone's name filled in for your jurisdiction that I have, asking you to specify, if you're okay with this being kind of the core group, who you want as your primary, to be designated the primary member of the steering committee. It can be more than one person. I fully envision that Clayton and I are both going to be core members here, because we bring different perspectives and different strengths. And so if you want to have a sustainability primary and a building primary, that is awesome. It's really up to you to define. And then who do you want as backups? Those people, I'm not really going to draw a distinction between. It's more, who do you want me to have as your primary points of contact? And that's the primary. And then who else do you want to be invited to this meeting? And that's the backup. And I'll clarify that in the email. And then who else do you want engaged, but just not necessarily in this meeting or in this meeting at this time? So really trying to get an understanding of that, so that who I include and how I include your staff is how you want me to. The other part of what I'm going to be asking is around the milestones, and saying we may want to do like a little working group around the project website and have some discussion. Do you want to be part of that? Some of these working groups may be done via email, some of them may be meetings, some of them may be a blend. We'll kind of figure that out. But are you interested in being a participant in some of these milestones? I did not include the surveys, one in that, because I really want everybody involved. So that'll be kind of a different kind of working group, where we'll probably do some of that in the context of these meetings. Thoughts? Please don't make me be the main person talking today. Nothing? Nobody?
Leslie, this is Anne from Illum. It sounds like a great plan. We're ready to get started. Thank you.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Because that was the last piece I had for you all.
Leslie, this is Genevieve Pear 3 from the City of Flagstaff. I have a quick question. Number one, I'm really excited about this, so glad to be involved. Number two, in terms of communication and document sharing, and maybe I missed this, are you going to be setting up any sort of SharePoint or folder, or like how are we going to be doing that and communicating? You mentioned email, but are there any other platforms you're thinking of or anything like that?
Yeah, we will definitely use some sharing platform. I think part of that needs to be a discussion that I have with Sean about whether, since as grant administrator, they may have something internal that they specifically want to use. The other thing I want to talk about is the ease of using Shared Drive, which is the Microsoft Teams version that I use, and I think NBI uses as well, which can be clunky and not user-friendly versus maybe more of a Dropbox kind of approach. So we'll have that conversation and we'll let you know. But yes, there will be some place that will help facilitate some of that information exchange, and where we will put drafts out for people to review and provide comments and things like that. That was a
Sounds
great
good.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? And if you haven't checked it out, here's the website. Actually, I wonder if I can pull it up. In case you hadn't seen it. Sorry, I've got too many monitors going. Is that still sharing? Can folks see that?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the website. It's part of Tucson's Climate Action Hub because we're trying to consolidate everything that we're doing that's in support of our climate action plan in one location. And this is why I want to have a conversation, because we can leave this here and have a separate project website. And I think that might make a lot of sense, and keep this as basic as it is. But feel free, we identified the partners. The original grant proposal is here. We'll put the SOPO up when it's available, kind of the rough timeline of the project. There's the stakeholder meeting that we had back in March. The recording of that is here, and people can, there's a really short form linked here where they can get added to the distribution list, and they can also indicate interest in being on equity advisory panel or a technical advisory group, or if they're a jurisdiction, being a partner in this. So I highly encourage you guys to share this, and allow people to know about the project and sign up and be part of it if they want. So, and that is really all I had. Quiet bunch today.
Leslie, I had a quick question. This is Catrice with Avondale. I'm currently working on revising the letter of commitment, and I was just wondering, are municipalities attempting to also include fringe benefits, or are they just using salary in order to try to put the dollar amount? I just want to make sure that I'm consistent with what the other municipalities are looking to do.
Well, what DOE, so we are having to do a full-on budget justification because because so much of my time is being committed, our match is above a certain threshold. And what we were asked to provide was salary, fringe, indirect costs, so like your overhead, and then there's like a GSA indirect. So DOE will take all of those. Not everybody does it the same way though. So Sean, you can pipe in. It's really kind of how you value your time. So for example, we don't do indirect. So that's not going to be part of our value. But if you do, you can because DOE allows that. Is that a okay answer?
That's a
Sean?
good answer.
Perfect. So just know how you calculated it in case there's
Exactly.
questions.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Very robust.
And do keep in mind that DOE does allows salary, fringe, and indirect. So if you have those, you can include them. If you don't, that's fine. Luckily, we don't actually have a cost share to meet. So the actual dollar values that you put in your letters kind of don't matter to a certain extent, but they have to exist for DOE to be happy with us.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I need to drop off to give a presentation. So thank you, everyone. It was great to meet you. And I look forward to working with all of you in one capacity or another.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks all. We'll see you
Thank
in
you.
November and hopefully a little bit more of a working session with
Thank
some
you.
things to
Thanks
look
all.
at.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.